Welcome, everyone, to the Buen-TEK Assembly at the IMPAKT Festival 2026, themed Techno-Ancestrality. This might be the biggest gathering of South American art organizations in a long while. Just imagine if they would fly back on the same airplane and something would go wrong, that would have serious consequences. But luckily, they're all flying in different planes, so I'm not worried about that. Some of you might know what Buen-TEK is, others not. Just so let me briefly explain it to you. But before I do and make my sentence too long, I'm sitting here next to Elisa Cuesta. She's from TBA 21, one of the partners in the Buen-TEK network. And she will do the Spanish translation. So if there's anything you would to translate now.
Sí. Bueno, bienvenido a todo el mundo. Voy a hacer más que una traducción al uso, una interpretación sobre la marcha para poder tener tiempo para acomodar todas las voces, porque no sería posible de otra manera. Bueno, simplificando un poquito lo que venía diciendo Arion, bienvenido a todo el mundo a esta edición de IMPAKT Festival Techno-Ancestrality. Es la primera vez en mucho tiempo que tantos artistas y tantas organizaciones de Sudamérica se unen aquí. Ha hecho un chiste sobre qué pasaría si todos fuésemos en el mismo avión, que ha sido un tanto extraño. Entonces, ese no lo voy a traducir. Y bueno, pues sí, esta es la primera asamblea que hacemos realmente encuerpándonos aquí todas las personas que hemos trabajado en el proyecto de Starts Buen-TEK y ahora nos va a contar un poquito más del proyecto Starts Buen-TEK.
Gracias. So Buen-TEK is part of START, which is the acronym of Science, Technology and Arts, a European funded project that wanted to strengthen the cultural collaborations between Europe and South America, together with 6, well actually 5, including IMPAKT 6, European partners and 10 organizations in South America. We've organized 10 residencies, we've organized a Buen-TEK Prize, all for works and artists that somehow addressed how located, ecological, traditional knowledge, how the spirit of Buen Vivir can help us see technology and how we live together in a different way.
Sí, STARTS Buen-TEK es la última edición del programa STARTS, que el acrónimo corresponde a Ciencia, Tecnología y las Artes en su conjunto. Esta es la primera colaboración que se hace entre un programa principalmente europeo y Sudamérica. Y bueno, en los últimos 18 meses hemos estado trabajando 6 partners europeos, entre quienes estamos TV21 y IMPAKT aquí y otros muchos que también están en la sala, junto a 10 organizaciones en Sudamérica. Para organizar de manera conjunta 10 residencias, también tenemos aquí a muchos de los artistas residentes y un premio. Y un poco la atmósfera y los temas que han tocado y atravesado todas estas residencias ha sido la atención que estamos prestando a los conocimientos situados, vernáculos desarrollados con fuerte arraigo en los territorios, también infundidos por las ideas y los movimientos políticos del buen vivir de la región andina.
And many of the artists and organizations present in Buen-TEK have been presenting at IMPAKT, or their work is still on display, or today they will give artist talks. So I advise you to check out the program for all the artists in Buen-TEK project. This session is mainly focused at the South American art organizations, the twins and the hosts of the residencies that Buen-TEK has organized in South America.
Muchas de las artistas que han participado en este programa también están participando en el Festival IMPAKT, tienen o bien obras en las exposiciones o están participando en algunos de los paneles. Hoy tenemos tres, perdón. Pero esta sesión, esta asamblea, convoca y une aquí principalmente a las organizaciones con las que hemos estado trabajando todo este tiempo.
And what we want to focus on in this conversation is how it works in South America to operate, especially when you have to organize or when you want to organize art projects outside of the bigger infrastructures, outside of the bigger cities, with communities on the ground, like many of the residencies that have been organized in Buen-TEK happened, for instance, in the Amazons, to address these issues related to traditional ecological knowledge, to buen vivir, to ecology on the ground in South America.
Bueno, y entonces lo que queremos, la pregunta que trasladamos en general a todas las organizaciones hoy, bueno, nos gustaría abrir la discusión sobre cómo es trabajar desde Sudamérica, también en colaboración con los partners europeos, pero sobre todo en territorio, más allá de las infraestructuras dominantes a nivel cultural, sobre todo, muchas veces trabajando en territorio, en contextos muy cercanos a comunidades, algunas indígenas, algunas locales también con muchísimo arraigo, y bueno, cómo hacemos esto a través de las tecnologías vernaculares y esta relación que mencionábamos con las ideas y las filosofías del buen vivir.
So we'll start with a brief introduction of the 8 organizations that we have present here on stage. They all operate in South American countries. They will briefly present to you what they do and who they are. And then we've thought of a few key questions that can address this issue of what it is to work with arts and culture in South America outside of the bigger institutions and bigger structures. And we very much want this to be a living room, if you want, kitchen conversation where all of you join. So feel free at any point to raise your hand and ask something if you have a question. I also hope that the participants among each other can respond to each other. So maybe we just get started with the first set of presentations.
Okay. This was a long one, but first vamos a empezar haciendo una ronda de presentaciones breves. Os vamos a ir llamando también para que podáis decir unas breves palabras, quiénes sois, dónde está vuestra organización y cuál es en qué estáis trabajando concretamente, más allá de las residencias. Y luego nos vamos a ir moviendo hacia 6 preguntas más amplias, pero fundamentalmente esto es una conversación, y si tanto que vosotras queréis compartir alguna pregunta con otras personas de la asamblea y también gente del público, por supuesto podemos hacerlo. Y si alguien quiere intervenir en español, yo intentaré traducir lo mejor posible. Sí que os pido que habléis en frases cortitas para que no se me olvide todo lo que estáis diciendo. Y podemos empezar con las presentaciones.
So, the first one we would like to invite to present is Jenny Campus. Sorry. And each one of us has 1 minute, so we have enough time for the conversations and the questions.
Sí, esta es una presentación breve para luego poder explayarnos más en las preguntas.
¿Está ahí? ¿Me escucha? Ya. Soy de la comunidad de La Chimba, de los Andes de Ecuador. Nosotros desde el Centro Intercultural hacemos una práctica a través del arte, de la ciencia, de la tecnología, para buscar una forma de sanar heridas dentro de la comunidad, y también es una forma de enseñar de ese territorio.
Jenny está aquí representando a la comunidad de La Chimba, en los Andes, en el Centro Intercultural Tránsito Amaguaña. Sí. Trabajan en arte, ciencia y tecnología, sobre todo enfocada a sanar... I'm repeating in Spanish. Sabía que I knew this would happen. I'm really sorry. Interrupt me if this happens again. Everyone is, tell me.
We'll get it.
Perdón. Jenny is coming from La Chimba, Ecuador, representing el Centro CICTA, Centro Intercultural Tránsito Mañagua. They work on art, science, and technology, especially focused on healing the wounds of the extractivity, the colonial legacies, and also pedagogical and teaching, no? Yeah. I missed that one a bit, perdón.
Gracias.
Thank you.
And the next one we would like to invite is Fabian. Yes, that's you. You can take that microphone.
Hello.
1 minute, Fabian.
Okay. Hello, I'm from Instituto Oceanographic of the University of São Paulo. We did a laboratory there. The name is LACO, Ocean Art Science Lab. And this lab works with exhibitions, transdisciplinarities in art, science, and ocean. We had the first art in residence with this program starts, that is Lícida. And we are very young because we have like 2 years, but we already work with more or less 300 artists and exhibitions in São Paulo Ocean Week, Rio Ocean Week. And I want to say Alexander Turra is my supervisor, academic supervisor in this project, me and Lisa, Elisa. I represent the Ocean Share, Cátedra UNESCO, Ocean Share UNESCO for the sustainability of the ocean as well. Okay.
Obrigada. Estela, you could be the next one if you don't mind.
Good morning, good afternoon. I'm from Brazil. I represent Pivot. Pivot is an autonomous contemporary art platform. We work with artists from 15 years. We started in São Paulo. At the venue is were projected, designed by Oscar Niemeyer, Copan, in the center of São Paulo. 3 years we opened a new venue in Salvador. That's Pivot. And we host Lícida as well in this program. We base on residencies, exhibitions, but also in research, art research. Lícida stayed with us in Salvador, in this townhouse, and she could visit different communities, Caiçara community in Ubatuba, but Marisqueiras, fisher women in Ilha de Maré, Indigenous communities, Candomblé, that's the Afro-Brazilian religion, so it was a pleasure to have her there, and we're going to discuss more about this later.
Obrigada. Igor, will you go next?
Hello, so I'm Igor. I'm here representing Unifor. Unifor is the University of Fortaleza, Universidade de Fortaleza. Fortaleza is, in case you don't know, is the capital of the state of Ceará, which is a state that located the northeast part of Brazil. The university is one of the largest universities of the state. I do research at a lab called NICEDIA, which is the Center of Data Science. I have to translate Data Science and Artificial Intelligence. As the name explained by itself, then we apply artificial intelligence on data science on a very large set of different problems. I do research studying cities, so we try to understand all the problems and things related with urbanism and the city itself. So we hosted the two residencies, the residency of Mari and Anthony. And I invite you to search more about their work. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we need some translations here, or
No, I think we otherwise
Yeah,
it's a bit.
we'll improvise a bit with translations also to keep the pace in the presentation?
Now it's the turn of Milena and Lucas. No,
Lorena and Elisa are
Hi, sorry.
next on the schedule.
I'm sorry.
Hola, hi. Hi everyone. My name is Elisa Arca. I am here representing Alta Tecnología Andina, high-end technology. We are based in Lima, Peru. The foundation, the organization was born in 1995, so a while ago, and it was primarily founded to research on art, science and technology, and it developed a long-living festival of video art in Peru, as well as ATA organized a series of residencies, Escuelab, for the Andean countries, and we are now dealing with multiple projects, some of which relate more to audiovisual preservation, but we're also going back to residency activities thanks to this program. So we hosted Jimmy, and Lorena is going to say more about that because she produced the entire residency.
Quickly, as nowadays ATA doesn't have like a material space in Lima or Peru, we work with the Alliance of the Scientific Station Chana in Pucallpa, and also with our translocal expert Josefa. Both of them help us to connect with indigenous communities in Pucallpa, Shipibo, Conibo community and Esconaba community, and that's the way how we work with Jimmy's project and about memory and sound.
Thank you. And now it's time for Milena and Lucas from Museo de Magna.
Hello, everyone. I work in Museum of Tomorrow, which is located in Rio de Janeiro, situated in a territory called Little Africa. It's a place of samba's roots and of foundational Black culture. And also we are in the Guanabara Bay, which is a bay where indigenous people believe the war has begun. And also we have fishermen disputing the place with ships, oil platforms, cruisers. So that's where we are. It's a complex system, and we try to deal with all of these questions. But at the laboratory, we try to bring the scale of the museum, which is huge, down to the encounters connecting agents and different ways of war making. And I think we perceive this tomorrow, as situated solutions and talks with the territory and like agency and connecting this huge network that we do. And I'll let Lucas introduce himself and the work at the residency.
Hi everyone, I'm Lucas Albuquerque. I was the curator of the last edition of the residency. Each year the residency has a thematic. Last year was post-natural and other ecologies that were focusing into research that were defying the notions of nature and culture. So we had the opportunity to bring Tatiana Zambrano with Gluon and also Buen-TEK. So it was a good opportunity of dialoguing, putting into dialogue all of this that Milena has mentioned, and also this idea of digital researches into Latin America. We will talk more about this later.
Thanks a lot, Lucas. Now maybe Alex from Plataedro.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Alex from Plataedro, a no-profit organization in Colombia, in Medellin. 22 years ago, we started with this process. We work in arts and technology for the Buen Vivir. We developed this between 3 programs. The formación is no formación, is de formación, arte y pensamiento, and Web3 WASI. It's 3 programs that instruct the different publics, the child, or the young people, and the mother of the child, and the artist. We have the resident artist, the aliens. This is a magic box. These residents, later you can maybe interact with this product. The Platoedro means, the name Platoedro means is that everybody has knowledge and experience that can put it in the collaborative process. The name is from the anime. The anime told about the Alejandro Magno story and the philosophy and the mathematical guys in this story, but very, very nice anime. I am very crazy with this anime. The name Platoedro significa que cada una de nosotras tiene una experiencia y un conocimiento que puede aportar a un proceso colectivo. Gracias.
Then the last of the 8 organizations present here on stage, that's Liquid Lab, all the way south in Chile. Nathaniel, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Nathaniel Alvarez from Liquid Lab. We are located in the extreme south of Patagonia, Chile. We are a laboratory of art, science, and technology. And we work in 3 areas, residencies, exhibitions, and educación, formación, de formación. Thank you.
And we have some key questions here that we would like to discuss with people here on stage, also with you. Feel free to raise your hand. And one of the maybe keywords that we've been dealing with a lot is how things can work very differently if you're outside of a existing art structure, if you want to deal with local communities. Situated knowledge and practices, that's a very important notion. So what we would like to ask all of you is to respond to how your organization defines what you see as appropriate technology. And we want to understand here technology in the wider sense of the word, so it's also organizational models, how you collaborate, or how you get your support, how you get your funding. Maybe you can share with us what you decide as what you see as appropriate within the specific context that you have to operate in, how you engage with the people that you're working with. And Nathaniel, because you are all this ways, sorry.
Take a minute to translate this.
Sorry.
Yes, en este primer bloque vamos a hablar de los conocimientos y las prácticas situadas. Nos interesa también por todos los temas que hemos estado trabajando en este proyecto, ¿no? Explorar qué constituye realmente una tecnología apropiada, más allá de cuestiones de alta o baja tecnología. Entonces, si entendemos la tecnología en esta versión un poco más alta de la palabra, más amplia de la palabra, aquí podemos hablar de los modelos organizacionales, cómo trabajamos, sobre todo en contextos un poco más alejados de grandes estructuras de financiamiento, cómo obtenemos apoyos, cuáles son nuestras redes de colaboración, etcétera, ¿no? Entonces, en este primer bloque vamos a estar hablando sobre, pues, cómo decidimos y en qué momento decidimos qué tecnologías son las apropiadas a aplicar en cada contexto.
Yes, go ahead.
¿Voy a hacerlo en español?
Vale.
Bueno, el Liquid Lab se plantea primero como un espacio de resistencia. Estamos ubicados en un lugar de extrema adversidad geográfica y cultural.
Liquid Lab is, first of all, a space of resistance because it is located in a very extreme region of the world, both ecologically and culturally.
Y en ese sentido, la tecnología, las tecnologías nos sirven para generar experimentación territorial y resistencia simbiótica.
And in this sense, the way they understand technology is to experiment territorially and to advance on experimentation, symbiotic experimentation?
Resistencia simbiótica.
Sorry, symbiotic resistance, I'm sorry.
Y bueno, el financiamiento viene de distintas fuentes, principalmente desde funcionamos desde el 2013. El financiamiento viene del Estado. Hay un fondo, un programa que nos permite tener un plan de gestión para funcionar todo un año.
They are working since 2013, and speaking about financing, no, they are running under a state fund that allows them to have a managing plan year after year.
Sí, y bueno, basados en el líquen, ¿cierto? Que es esta criatura que que hace simbiosis, hacen dos seres, una alga, cianobacterias, y un hongo hace simbiosis para resistir en un lugar tan extremo como el que vivimos. Decidimos usar esta metáfora para relacionarnos con otros sujetos colectivos que no tienen que ver necesariamente con el arte.
Okay, so they are very much inspired by the lichen, no? This symbiotic creature that is half an algae, half of a bacteria, and that does this symbiosis to resist for resilience, no, and resistance to extreme weather conditions. And this metaphor. Esta metáfora me he quedado
La
ahí.
metáfora nos sirve para relacionarnos con otros sujetos colectivos.
And this metaphor, they use this metaphor to relate themselves with other collective subjects and beings.
Que no tienen que ver precisamente con el arte.
That don't necessarily need to be connected to art.
Pero que nos unimos para resistir y generar reflexión.
We get together to resist and to generate reflection and thinking.
I don't know if any one of the other panelists wants to respond to how you relate to the communities, this idea of being in a symbiosis with maybe the people and the nature that you work with.
Perdón, me faltó mencionar que, bueno, nos relacionamos con otros sujetos colectivos que tienen que ver con comunidades indígenas, comunidades disidentes, personas con discapacidad y artistas y científicos.
And when he was missing this part, he wanted to expand a bit more on these collective subjects in the way they relate themselves with indigenous communities, dissident communities, people with impairities, and with and scientists, of course. Lucas.
It's interesting, this word of appropriate technology, because when I was seeing some of the talks that some artists were doing here all of those days, it was very reaching, but also I was wondering what we expect when we are talking about artists dealing in the Global South, dealing with digital technology or even technology itself, since it's a very complicated word. So in our example with Tatiana in our residency, it has all of this influence that Milena has told, of the space that we are sediated and all of the cultures that forms Brazil. But Tatiana is also engaging with video games and this, how can I say, this global north product that it's very produced by them, and that in a lot of times we are consuming. But at the same time, the global South has a very important role in it, because there is a lot of outsourcing labor in all of this process. So we are part of forming this type of product, this type of material. So Tatiana and all of the artists that we hear here have heard in all of those days, they are part of a major scene. So in the case of her and in the case of Mari, that is also producing a game, as she told me there, it's also interesting that they are also defying this idea of how they are producing something in the Latin America, that it's not something that relates with a kind of Latin American technology, but at the same time they are using something that they are, engaging with, learning how to do this with all of their knowledge, the way that they can do it. So it's also interesting how all of the artists in here are defying this idea of work that it's being produced within this context. So that's also interesting to discuss in here and to see in all of the works that we are seeing in it.
Thanks, Lucas. The next question we have is, in the break or just before we started, we were talking about also how the political context can be very different in South America than it is, for instance, here in the Netherlands. I think you will start the question in Spanish. Please go ahead.
Sí, yo creo que una de las primeras duchas también de realidad que tuvimos a la hora de organizarnos, ¿no? Colectivamente en este proyecto fue darnos cuenta, ¿no? De estas diferencias. Y claro, cómo las políticas locales, las realidades ecológicas y sociales distintas están influenciando cada tipo de prácticas y cada labor que pueden hacer las organizaciones. Y concretamente aquí hay una pregunta que nos gustaría llevar a Jenny, ¿no? Porque sabemos que en Ecuador tuvimos, ¿no? uno de los principales, principalmente una huelga nacional brutal que fue severamente reprimida, ¿no? Por parte del gobierno, causando muchas muertes, muchos heridos y muchas formas de abuso en comunidades muy cercanas a la chimba y tocando muy de cerca la residencia. Fue un sufrimiento que también de alguna manera, ¿no? nos llega y nos gustaría que nos hablases también un poquito de eso. Lo voy a traducir un poco al inglés, ¿vale? So, one of the first reality shocks, I guess, we had from the beginning was how to react and how to embed in the process of collaboration between North and South in this case, and realizing how all the different local political, social and ecological contexts were, of course, obviously influencing the different organizational practices. And specifically, we in Ecuador, and very closely to the residency in La Chimba, during this time, it was marked by a big national strike that was very severely repressed by the government, causing deaths, causing injuries, causing multiple forms of abuse in communities and people very close to the resident artists and very close to La Chimba. So I wanted to address this question specifically to Jenny, so maybe you can tell us a bit more.
Bueno, para situarnos un poco mejor, el CICTA ha sido declarado desde el año del 2009 como un centro de resistencia indígena.
CICTA has been declared since 2009 a Center for Indigenous Resistance.
Y debido a eso, nosotros como forma de resistir, creamos este espacio de residencia para sanar distintas heridas que se han generado ahí con el paso de los años.
And as a form of resistance, they decided to create this space of a residency to heal the different wounds that were made through the different years.
Fue la segunda residencia que realizamos con Lorena Salas y realizamos la residencia de Turminta.
This was the second residency they did with Lorena Salas, who's also in the room, and this was the Project Turminta.
Todo esto lo realizamos a raíz de que Pedro realzó, de hecho, este espacio del CICTA que estuvo ya como teniendo altos y bajos y entre las principales se puede decir que es casi cerrándose y fue una forma de dar realce al espacio también.
So this is also very connected to how Pedro, the translocal expert, right, of the residency, highlighted a lot the work that CICTA was doing because it was going through different highs and downs and it was nearly close to closure at some point and this really helped pushing it up again.
Bueno, para realizar esta residencia fue bastante complicado porque realmente vivimos la verdadera tormenta. Fue un poco complicado para Lorena el tema de la movilización, el tema de realizar la residencia mismo. Pese a eso, nosotros nos mantuvimos como en resistencia, ¿no?
Okay, it was a bit difficult, no, for you throughout this time because you actually lived the actual tormenta, no? The tormenta is a storm. Especially this was a bit tough for Lorena, no? Especially in terms of mobility and the unfolding of the residency itself, but they self-organized in a form of resistance to be able to make this through.
Pero esto nos ayudó a comprender que a través del arte, que a través de la ciencia, que es lo que estamos trabajando como CICTA, podemos sanar diferentes como heridas que tiene, cicatrizar algunas heridas que tiene la comunidad en temas de trabajar conjuntamente desde hace diferentes años.
So from an art and science perspective, which is what CICTA has been engaging for a while now, they have been learning how to heal these open wounds, especially by working together and working together with the communities, with the local communities.
Ya que eso nos ayudó también a reconocer, a resaltar sobre todo el conocimiento de nuestros ancestros, ya que trabajamos pese a todas estas dificultades, realizando entrevistas a adultos mayores de la comunidad y luego transmitiendo estos saberes a los niños también de la comunidad. Fue una manera de incluir a toda la sociedad dentro del territorio.
So first, it was necessary to acknowledge the knowledge of the ancestors, and one of the very specific ways they did this was by interviewing the elders, but also transmitting these learnings to the different kids in the communities in this intergenerational dialogue.
Claro, es bastante complicado para nosotros como SICTA el trabajar por el mismo hecho de que nosotros nos manejamos mediante autogestión. Y lo que hacemos, bueno, no soy solamente yo, estoy ahora encargada del SICTA, pero también está Pedro Soler, que muchas personas igual han hablado mucho de él y pues siempre también lo tengo presente aquí. Y también mi compañera Karen Benalcázar, que es la encargada del laboratorio. De ahí que como laboratorio estamos trabajando igual para concientizar a las personas en cuanto a dejar de utilizar agroquímicos y empezarnos a cuestionar.
Give me a moment, un poquito. SICTA is very much a self-managed center. Of course, it is Jenny herself, but it's also Pedro. We have been talking about Pedro. He's not going to be able to be present today, but it's present with us in multiple ways. And also Karen Benalcázar, who is the lab manager. ¿Puedes volver a decir lo del laboratorio desde el agro?
Sí, estamos trabajando desde el laboratorio con Karen Benalcázar, quien nos ayuda a realizar análisis del suelo, y la frase con la que resulta también como que llamativo y cuestionable de decir que nosotros somos lo que nuestra comida come. Aparte, dentro de la residencia se trabajó tomando muestras de agua, de nubes, de glaciares, de vertientes, de los ríos y también de nuestras lágrimas, porque dentro de la residencia era un contexto de ir relacionando cómo están las nubes, ¿sí?
Un momentito. See, one of the processes that was connected to this lab was the different analysis of the soil. There is these sentences that says that we are whatever ¿cómo es? ¿Somos lo que la comida come?
Nosotros somos lo que nuestra comida come.
We are whatever our food is actually eating, no? So this was in the core of the soil analysis, but they were also taking samples and analyzing the clouds, the glaciers, the rivers, and also the tears.
Sí, y íbamos relacionando como a través de un diario de nubes que hicimos, relacionando cómo están las nubes y relacionando cómo estamos internamente. Y toda esta residencia lloramos tanto que por eso también tomamos la muestra de nuestras lágrimas.
Okay, so through a cloud diary, they were trying to connect whatever it was going on in the atmosphere and in the clouds with whatever it was going on in the bodies, and in the form of a cloud diary. And because through this residency they were crying so much, they also felt compelled to make analysis and samples of the tears.
Sí, porque ha sido como bastante complicado también el trabajar dentro de una comunidad que está fracturada.
Because it has been proved very difficult to work within a fragmented community.
Sobre todo ahí en ese sitio donde hubo tanto sufrimiento, donde líderes como Tránsito Maguaña.
Especially in this place, which is a space in which much suffering has been lived, and territorial leaders such as Tránsito Amaguaña, I'm sorry.
Que vivió y fue parte de esas haciendas a lo que ahora es este museo donde se habla de su legado. También incluyendo arte y ciencia para cambiar como la forma de educar también a las personas.
Tránsito Amaguaña lived in this hacienda, in this, how do you translate hacienda? Farmland, yes. That is now the SICTA, and that's why they are also including art and science and technology in these processes.
Sí, así que bueno, ha sido todo un proceso, pero estamos tratando de cambiar lo triste, lo malo, a algo donde podemos compartir todos. Y esa es la manera como nos mantenemos hasta ahora.
It has been a whole journey of trying to transform the sadness and the bad situation now in something a bit more positive, more healing, and this is the way that they have been ongoing until now.
Thank you.
I want to say something quickly. Latin America is es una tierra que ha sido bastante en conflicto. Nosotros siempre estamos, digamos, resolviendo conflictos. En Chile hubo un movimiento fuerte de político y social. Okay.
Do you want to go in English? You can translate yourself.
I try.
Venga.
In Latin America, always we have conflict. No, in Chile we have the problem, the movements, political, social. Then in Colombia, then in Peru, because all the time is the two forces, the right and the left is the different. Point of view, how to manage the country, but some people have more capitalist, some people have more roof process, but all the time we have in these two forces peleando. So all this process, the art, technology is very important for us because it's all the ways to try to go out and try to solution and try to find other ways to live together. But the resident of Lorena is very complicated for this, but all the time we have these problems in Latin America.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I want to add the same thing, right? The whole South America struggle with the dictatorship in the 60s, 70s. So Brazil is just celebrating the new democracy constitutions, 40 years only. And we came from a political moment and with the former president that devastated the arts and the ecological part in our country. And it's each 4 years, it's defined what we're going to be able to do and how we're going to live and how we're going to survive. So the political state in the whole South America changed quite a lot, and it's a resistance all the time, even if it's left wing or a political that respect a little bit more. We need also to be watching out and to make that chance that we have to build a ground. Mm-hmm. So South America, all the political changed everything, and it's a struggle for us to keep going with the work that we do. And first thing that the budget's cut comes to art, right? So all the art in management in Brazil and South America, it's very difficult because of the political scene.
Would you say that it's then maybe better to be a small independent organization, because then you wouldn't be depending on political support changing 4 years and then back and forth?
It's easier in terms of deciding what we want to work on, but not on the budget side, because once the political change, the scene changes, less budget and less even outside budget coming in Brazil, because of they always investing in Brazil, and it backlashes also, even in independent, not so independent art institutions.
Maybe connects a bit to the next topic I would like to address, which is the infrastructures and the limitations. So we have, I think, two very big institutions, Musea de Manya, Unifor, you're a big university, which can come maybe with all kinds of benefits, stability, but also bureaucracy maybe, or dependent on bigger plans, where I can also imagine that maybe being all the way in the south, Tierra Fuega, far away from the bigger structures, that also comes with freedom to do what you want and not to be supervised. So infrastructures and limitations. Many of you work in conditions of limited infrastructures. how do improvisation and constraint, maybe, how can you turn your limitations into strength, and how can that be that? How can you make that into a benefit? And maybe Fabian, I think you addressed.
Let me translate this one, sorry. Sí, en este tercer ya bloque de la conversación vamos a estar hablando un poco más sobre las limitaciones y las infraestructuras, ¿no? Tanto pensando en infraestructuras más grandes, como puede ser una universidad, como puede ser UNIFOR, como puede ser el Museo de Amaña, más conectadas con marcos más institucionales, a las organizaciones más pequeñas, más desde abajo, ¿no? Entonces, en condiciones de infraestructuras limitadas, ¿cómo podemos hacer para que la improvisación, esa falta de previsión, esa falta de recursos se conviertan en virtudes, en formas de conocimiento en sí mismas o tecnologías más allá de la limitación? Ese es el bloque.
I wanted to turn to Fabian also because there's this nice notion in Brazil of gambiarra, which is making do and improvising, whatever you have available, make things happen. Maybe you talk a bit about that.
Yes. Well, I will start with what Stella said. No, this last government, Bolsonaro, was really bad for science. He destroyed many programs in the country. So this new president Lula is trying to organize things again, but we needed to take the election this year in October, so we don't know because what will happen. So I agree totally what she says. We are always improvising, and in the academic context, it's a bit better because it has stable budget from the government or particular private, university private, but it still is really difficult. But we do gambiarra, and what is gambiarra? We are always constructing things how we can. For example, what a psychologist who are doing in the Oceanographic Institute. We are trying to have a lab that really can see inside of the water, because if we wait if we would just make it by ourselves without connect with our university, it will take long time to see what we can see with big labs. No, for example, a plankton universe, and the plankton eating a nanoplastic is difficult if you don't have a really good lab with a very good microscope, and very good and big, and you can see the planktons really big. So what I'm saying is, we are in LACO, we are trying exactly make democratic, not democratic, but a transdisciplinary process, and through the formation courses, bring people for inside of this ocean of the this vision of the ocean in microscopic way. For example, right? There is a lot of labs with the nanoplastic, with the plastic, with the hyperfishing, the people who the fishers, no? The fishers is complaining a lot because I'm talking a lot now. Because I forget. The fishers complain a lot because China and other countries is with these big boats taking all the fish, and at the same way, and the same, ao mesmo tempo, the same time, in the same time, we are with this invasion of reefs, of sun reefs, that is taking all our reefs. So our communities in this moment, You know, the first conference, the first talk I said, I was working with techno-shamanism. But now I really enter into the communities of the sea. And I think it is precarious. But we are always giving this this way to make gambiarras and relational, emotional gambiarras as well, because it's not just technological, no? And everybody who works with art science knows how difficult it is to connect and make it make sense for both, because the artist is a superstar and the scientist as well, and the twins as well. So how can we work with this ecosystem emotionally is as well appropriation infrastructure that we have to deal with.
Yes.
I don't know if I answered.
It was an emergency. Anyone responds to this?
I want to say a little bit of the Gambiarra because it's a technology.
Yes.
It's a hack technology. So, and in this, especially in this project, we worked with the science and we observed a lot of the nature. And the nature is a Gambiarra, if you think about it. And I think because of the so many becauses, but we are related to nature differently than in Europe, I think. And because of this, we learn with nature how to do the gambiarra. So one of the technology that is in this project is a gambiarra. And we work with the limited conditions, but also it's exceptional what we do with so limited conditions.
Yes.
And I think that's a struggle, but it's also something for us to be proud of, you know.
Thank you, Stella. I think we can now slowly move on to the next block, which is ethics of knowledge translation. We can still, of course, engage with the previous questions as we go. But yeah, I think it connects a bit with what Stella was saying. And how do you navigate translating these local ancestral knowledges, but also infused by the teachings of nature, no, into artistic, scientific, and institutional context, especially when we are speaking into the artistic context, no, without simplifying or aestheticizing or instrumentalizing this. And in this sense, we would like to also be asking Milena and Lucas from Museo da Maña, how do you see this, no? Being a big institution as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that Museum of Tomorrow reveals this complexity of the territory, like reflects this complexity of the territory that we are in. We have different departments there. We have the educational department, we have the laboratory, we have the School of Science, and we have a department called Communities and Territory that relates to our neighborhood there. And so we have a lot of projects for specific audiences, a diversity of audience. Like I can say for the laboratory, we have a project called Ideas Lab, which is an incubator for young people from the Rio's peripheries to design solutions for their own territories. So they go through a formative process for about 3 months there, and they learn some tools to think about the problems of their own territories and develop and design projects for their own territory. So we spread what we do in the museum for other territories in Rio. And we have also the artistic residency that Lucas will talk a little bit more. We have some workshops now that is election year in Brazil. We are having workshops about using AI to create fake news for the elderly. So they are most affected with this fake news and not knowing how to differentiate what is real and what is not. So we are doing these workshops. And also we have a choir. This community department has a choir with homeless people that lives on the neighborhoods. And also we have a podcast of called Letters to the Guanabara Bay, which talks about it's almost like a documentary with the communities that lives from the Guanabara Bay, that works with fishing, with the natural resources and cultural resources of the Guanabara Bay, and all of the disputes that happens there. So as a big institution, we are able to do a lot, but I think that we have this will and this drive to make more, to make everything that we can, because I think that besides the fuel infrastructure in some areas and technology, we have the most important technology, which is the creativity and the survival. Like Gambiarra is this way of surviving and doing everything with the few, but doing the better we can. And so I think that we like to be connected to this image of abundance and not scarcity. We don't like to think that we work in scarcity. We work with abundance of creativity, of relational technologies, because I think that the most important is to look to our territory, to look for the technologies of relating ourselves within the nature that's around us, and this ability to relate ourselves to coexistence. Mm-hmm. This is what is most important for us, and this is what drives us in every project that we do in the museum. And I'll let Lucas talk a bit about the residency.
I think that the residency is very privileged into not capturing all of those identities, because residency is a place of dialogue. And in our cases, this is, and also in the case of Pivot, and I guess in some of the institutions that are here, this is part of a very beginning phase of all of our process, because we do not decide all of the residents and the projects by ourselves. We also have juries of people coming from abroad, other institutions, other places of Brazil. But I have had the opportunity also to work with of artists from Europe, North America, that sometimes come to Brazil with this idea of, of what a tropical country is, what are these ancestral indigenous knowledge. And we know that we have this, those ideas that sometimes are preconceived. And when they come, they arrive and they can see all of the complexity that we have in our country. It's a changing process and a changing experience that I think that in cases of an exhibition, that sometimes you have, this idea of a show, of, of presentation, that sometimes doesn't involve this dialogue. I think that the residency in this case is a way more privileged place to be.
I think there's also room for the audience to join the discussion whenever you have questions. I see a hand raised there. I also have questions actually for Atta and for Milena, but maybe first let's have an audience question. I see 3 hands raised even. Yes.
Hola, voy a decirlo en español, así que Lisa me ayuda. Yo me preguntaba por las condiciones de continuidad de este tipo de proyectos o redes, en las cuales, pues en esta primera experiencia piloto vemos unos resultados muy interesantes, pero quienes estamos en la ejecución de proyectos sabemos lo importante que es recibir apoyos continuados para inclusive pues hacer proyectos conjuntos entre las organizaciones y llevar pues apoyar también la sostenibilidad que permite que todo esto se pueda hacer. Entonces me pregunto si en Buen-TEK...
Elisa has to translate, so maybe you break things up a little bit. So.
Okay.
Yeah, but it makes sense. She's asking about the continuity, about this sort of projects and network building projects, Specifically, she's saying that these first editions and pilot projects are, of course, producing very interesting outcomes already, but there is always the question of the continued support and how we can continue. We actually have a blog for your question later on. But what's the question? ¿Cuál es la pregunta específica?
No, sí, están pensando en una continuidad para justamente apoyar la sostenibilidad de estas iniciativas y de los resultados a largo plazo.
Yeah, she's asking if we have a plan. If we have a plan of continuity.
You don't have a plan.
In general,
But are you hoping to have a plan?
we're full of plans. What I had to think of, because I was joining part of the residency that Jimmy did with Atta, and we went to Santa Teresita, which was very much going into the community of the Shipibo. What's the full name? Shipibo? Conibo, excuse me. So I'm curious, how Atta, do you have a specific policy when it comes to having an artist? I remember one of the residents organizations that's not here, Mama. One of the first things that they brought in is, and maybe you're addressing it also, we don't want to helicopter an artist in and then out again, and the community with which they have been engaging is just left, okay, what was this? So maybe what is kind of the ethics of engaging with a community? What can you say about that?
I think it's really closely connected to the question that was asked in terms of continuity. I think a part of me wants to say we hope for the best, in terms of we hope we will be able to give continuity to what was born out of this residency. I think this is a topic that we've been coming back over and over again with Jimmy, the conversations that we've had about the many ideas that these conversations sparked, and also like thinking about the workshops that were held. They are quite wonderful, and I do wonder what Atta can do. I think we need to sit down and think about what to do with these conversations, with making them, perhaps taking a different shape, and not only in terms of what they can do for Jimmy's project, but also for the communities. And perhaps Lorena has more to say about this.
I wanted also to respond maybe the question before about lacking some materials or institutional structures, and to mix it with this question, because I think something interesting about Atta and don't having maybe a material place is that we made like this strange connection with Chan Station. They've been making linguistic research in Amazonian territory, specific with Shipibo, Conibo, and Isconawa language. That now there is no younger people who are talking more Isconawa, and they've been working there for almost also 17 years. Maybe it's kind of the age of Atta. And I think in this meeting of these two different, but at the same time with having a lot of common institutions, organizations, Atta and Chana, we found that we have a lot of stuff in common, and I think Chan Station also learned a lot of this residency. In the moment that we made a workshop and all this, we have like a dialogue with different indigenous representation communities about how they found about technology and how they find about how they feel being recorded in sound and in image. And I think that Chan Station in the linguistic research found this a place also to complement the researching. And also to maybe collaborate in more like to create cinema spaces for the Isconawa community, photographic intervention that we made in the workshop. Maybe we don't have like a really strong structure, but making these connections, and especially having in mind that in the Amazonian there is people who are working a lot of time. I mean, not only Chan Station, we also work with Colorimetria, that is a self-managed gallery, art that you went there also. And it was really, maybe this is also an excuse to make more community and to make these bonds even stronger. And I think that's one of the ways to also think how this can last even more. with Mariana, who made the workshop in January, we were thinking and also doing some itinerary exhibitions of this workshop in the communities, because one of the good things is that we made like cyanotype impressions of some photography and also textile interventions with the Shipibo community patterns. So they are really easy to take to different places. We also already showcase it in Pucallpa. So I think that we have like a lot of plans that can be done self-managed, but if we want to do like another maybe longest researching or workshops, we also need to find finance. But now we are not only one, we are two, and then we are going to be three. So I think the alliances are really important and a way to survive in Latin America.
Sí, ¿queréis añadir algo por aquí también en español? Estas preguntas estamos hablando sobre la continuidad, sobre la dificultad, ¿no?, de sacar adelante los proyectos, pero bueno, no sé si es muy difícil hacer un resumen rápido de todo lo que se ha ido hablando, pero sí, estamos ahora como en un bloque de dónde vamos más allá de esta colaboración, ¿no? Y cuáles pueden ser los legados, de alguna manera, de este tipo de proyectos.
Pues we have to work in crisis, no? All the time is the Canberra is very important for that, because we have all the time we have two solutions with what we have two solutions. And Colombia, we have the cacharreo. It's very nice because when you make something that no original, there's no high tech, we call it hechizo. This something hechizo is very connected with the magic, but it's very nice. But in this moment, it's very important to see the Cuba. Cuba had many years in bloque. The people all the time is in this process to adapt and transform, and it's very important for this kind of mind how to change, survive in our context. So for us to continue, it's very important to build relation and to build affectos, no? Because we are here, Añara, Fabiana, nos conocemos hace mucho tiempo y podemos, como, a pesar de que no tenemos presupuestos continuos, seguimos soñando con hacer cosas bonitas a pesar de toda la mierda que hay alrededor. Okay. Entonces es una cosa muy de nosotros, que siempre estamos en crisis, pero la construcción de afectos, el que esas cosas atraviesen realmente el cuerpo más allá de la institución es importante. Eso es lo que genera un impacto a largo plazo, o poder ver cosas a largo plazo, porque son proyectos de 6 meses, 1 año, tienen presupuesto, pero luego los procesos tienen que alimentarse de esas otras cosas. Para mí es muy importante el love-tech.
Sí, do you mind? I can translate very quickly what you said, and then Alex just introduced the context, the idea of the love-tech for the next one, and he's. No, and the last one was in Spanish, no? Keep dreaming, transfer in a way that we make all these relationships, relational technologies, all these affectos that can go through the bodies, no, atravesarnos, and also that allow us to keep thinking on the long term, behind the short project times, which are always short and continuous, and so on. Therefore, love-tech. Jenny.
Bueno, también para nosotros como comunidad es bastante importante seguir creciendo en estos procesos, porque es una forma de ir sanando heridas dentro de la comunidad.
For them, for SICT as a community, it's very important to also continue growing in these sort of processes, as processes of healing within the community. Yeah.
Porque a través del arte nosotros podemos enseñar, es una forma de nosotros enseñar a través de la ciencia, el arte, todo ese conocimiento que tenían nuestros abuelos y que se está perdiendo. Una forma de incluir también y hacer que ellos sean valorados.
And through art and science, teaching through art and science is a way of transforming and communicating this knowledge that the elders and the ancestors had, and it's a way to keeping it alive.
Puede que no tengamos una infraestructura inmensa, pero bueno, para mí todo esto es nuevo. También estuvimos participando del Festival de Calafú y vi que podemos crear muchas cosas más si nos unimos y unimos esos saberes que cada uno de nosotros tenemos.
Okay, it may be that they don't have a super big infrastructure, but they have been learning. They have, for example, participated in the Festival Calafú, and one of the realizations from this participation is that if we come together and if we make networks and collaborations, it's a way of keep on going and keep learning.
Así que podemos aprender también hablando entre nosotros, compartiendo, y es muy importante, muy importante.
And this...
Sorry, es very important to the principios del buen vivir. Es importante bailar juntos, beber juntos, comer juntos. Todos los 13 principios del buen vivir son muy importantes como tecnologías, que todas las llevamos en nuestros cuerpos para que haya ese buen vivir, ¿no?
There is these 13 principles of the buen vivir, to know how to dance, to know how to eat, to know how to, you said many, and it's important that we, well, we know that we already embody them. It's a matter of learning how to share them, no?
I think habla juntos is also one of the principles. Maybe that's good to, if there's any audience questions, because we're running out of time. Time's up, 5 minutes more for some audio questions. So I see lots of raised hands. We will go to the bar, so whatever question doesn't get asked, you can ask it in private. Maybe we go over there, because in that corner we haven't had a question. Yeah, the lady with red hair, sorry. Sitting next to Tasha. Try to keep your question short, sorry.
I very quickly wanted to ask about your kind of international supporters, because I think it's very interesting to understand, I don't know, where the organization, from which countries the organizations come from that also kind of work with you, cooperate, support, because it's also often very political. And when I'm reading about the films who supported, I read countries like Switzerland, Pro Helvetia, or Germany, Goethe-Institut, but I never really read maybe US American institutions, so I'm just interested. Yeah.
Anyone wants to pick up?
We have a few from Brazil, so raise your hands. But yes, so there is 2 institutions in the southeast of Brazil. Brazil is a huge country, and 2 of the northeast, and we are very distincted also. If we taking economically, culturally, the northeast and the southeast is very different. But
sure. I mean, no, it's fine. I was not expecting to answer this question. I don't think we are in principle. I mean, how to say this? The reason why you didn't see any supporters from the US, I think it has to do more with the US than with us. Of course, we are perfectly aware of the complexities of, financing our projects with money from the European Union, or we've been talking about this, and we wonder, what can we do in relation to this, so to speak, complexity? And I obviously don't have an answer to that. And I guess we're just trying to make the most of it, like gathering here and meeting. I didn't know anyone in this room before except Lorena and Jimmy. So, except for Zoom, right? So, and being here is a privilege, and I personally don't take it for granted. And I want to think that perhaps, as colleagues were saying, this is like a seed to do other projects and to be adopted by other institutions and do projects together. But that doesn't take away what you're saying. And yeah.
One last question, and we really have to round up.
Thank you.
The lady over there, maybe?
Just to respond to the previous question, that US has stopped development funds, and that's the reason as well why we don't see funding coming to the Global South specifically. So my question is more like an observation that coming from the Global North, and particularly from the UK, I know that there are budget cuts, major budget cuts into the arts, and artists as well within this part of the world are suffering as well in reference to doing work. But one thing that is very interesting through your conversation is the idea of resilience, which I don't like very much the word, but it comes through the different words that you used. So my question observation is how in a neoliberal state of affairs where currently and more, and including the Netherlands, that also there are budget cuts in the arts, as far as I know as well, how can we do alliances and what are the tools that we can share? So what can be the tooling processes that you have that can be shared and create dialogues with artists, particularly from independent institutions who are also activists?
Any response?
Indeed.
Yes.
More question?
Tin, front row. An answer or a question, Tin?
What is this? Okay. I think that just to answer, maybe you have other answers, but I have kind of an answer about that, because I think that right now, this neoliberal state that you're saying, it's in a way cutting these funds, but also is capitalizing through the identities that we are speaking here, no? So what I think is that beyond understanding that we are part of this capitalizing system, we are a part of this chain that allows people that are part of these big state powers that continues colonization, etc., maintain their power in the institutions. I think that there's a solution there in our connections, in the way that we can gestionate our own frame of action. So once we are positioned in the places of decision-making, fund-making, we can auto-gestionate our own cultural gestion. And I think that is the beginning of us taking this reparative justice, these funds to liberate other ideologies beyond what is happening right now. Yeah.
I think we got a clear signal. Time's up. I would like to thank Sista, IOSPU LACO, PIVO, Universidade de Fortaleza, Brazil, ATA, Museu da Manha, Plato Hedro and Liquid Lab, all the organizations present here. I would like to thank you all for being here, and Elisa for helping with translation and of course moderating. You can continue the conversation in the bar, build collaborations and continue together. Thanks a lot.
Ahorita yo voy a